Hey everyone, it's Angie and welcome back to my channel, Angie Rose Nomad. Today I have my March wrap-up video for you all. In the month of March, I participated in the March Mystery Madness readathon that was hosted all month by some fantastic booktubers. I unfortunately did not really participate in social media or Goodreads groups, but I read a lot of mystery thriller books. Yeah. See previous videos. I really haven't been on social media a lot lately, but I am planning to take some photos tomorrow night and work on my social media presence more. That is a goal that I would like to accomplish in April. So during the month of March, I read 13 books, which is absolutely insane. 2 of the 13 I finished on the first day of April, but we're going to count them towards March because I read most of them in the month of March rather than the first day of April. I think in both books it was less than 30 pages. So we're going to cheat a little and count them. So really quickly, I'm going to refresh you on my March TBR. I had 14 books listed there, and I'm just going to go down the list and let you know if I got to them or not. I had Murder on the Links, which I did not get to. No Time for Goodbyes, which I did. A Fatal Grace, yes. IQ, yes. Deal Breaker, yes. Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder, no. Scene of the Climb, yes. Marigolds and Murder, I DNF'd. Spy the Lie, yes. All These Beautiful Strangers, yes. Donuts and Deception was actually incorrect. It was supposed to be Pancakes and Corpses, which I did get to as well. The Woman in the Window, no. The Stranger, It Has Been Started. And Caught Red-Handed, no. So out of 14 books, I read 8 of them and DNF'd 1. So I was pretty pleased with that progress. So let's just get into what I read. The first thing I read was IQ by Joe Ide. This was a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed this book. I also listened to a good bit of it on audio, and it was narrated by Sullivan James, who was phenomenal. I talked about it in my first Friday reads of the month. And IQ fits the prompt in March Mystery Madness of again, because I was putting it on my TBR again. So we follow the story of a man named Isaiah who lives in a not particularly well-off neighborhood where crime is very frequent and the police focus on crime, but there are still so many things going on that it's really kind of impossible to get to everything, and then some of the things they just kind of want to sweep under the rug and forget about. So Isaiah has started his own agency, and he is an investigator, and in this novel, he is trying to figure out who wants to kill this rap mogul. But along with that storyline, we also go back in time to when Isaiah was a teenager and this dynamic that he had with his brother and what led him to the life of an investigator, which I really loved that storyline in particular. I enjoyed seeing how he kind of got shaped to be the person that he became. So when I sat down to film, I thought I had all of my physical books, but I did not. I am missing one, and that is Scene of the Climb by Kate Dyer Seeley. This follows the story of a girl named Meg, who is out of work, and she meets this guy that works at an adventure magazine company. And she kind of bluffs and says she has all of this experience to land the job. She is a journalist, but she doesn't really know much about adventure or outdoors or anything like that. So she lands the job, and her first big assignment is to follow this reality show competition that is coming to their area called Race the States. Now, she is going on hikes with them and trying to gather interviews with them, things along those lines. And on one of these hikes, Meg sees someone fall to their death. So there is debate as if it was an accident or a murder. It is later discovered that it was a murder, and she's trying to figure out who done it. I gave this a 3, and the prompt that it would fulfill for March Mystery Madness is new, because this is a new series for me. Not a new author, because I have read other things by her, but writing under the name of Ellie Alexander. I was not keen on this book. It was an easy read, but I felt that Meg was very whiny and acted like a child, and multiple times other characters would tell her, stop acting like a child, and multiple times Meg would say, stop treating me like a child, and it was just this merry-go-round. So I really didn't like Meg's character development at all, and she was our protagonist, so I felt like we should have I do have books 1 and 2. I have made a decision to go ahead and unhaul book 1, and I think I'm going to get rid of book 2 with it. I have looked on Scribd, and book 2 is there, so I can read it if I want. It did leave off at a little bit of a cliffhanger. Meg's father died before the book started, and there was something more involved with his death, which is the cliffhanger that it left on. So I was kind of interested about that, but I really don't know if I can stand to read about Meg for another book, as horrible as that sounds. Then I picked up All These Beautiful Strangers by Elizabeth Keflaw. I rated this a 3.5 stars. I listened to it on audio, and it is narrated by Eggsy Sands, which is one of my new favorite audiobook narrators. I found Eggsy to be fantastic, but the book had some problems. It was fine. It was highly, highly readable. I thought the plot kept the book moving forward very, very nicely, but characterization, I did have a little bit of issues. So we follow 3 different stories. So Charlie is in present day, reminiscing a little bit on her mom, who has vanished a year ago, I think. I can't remember for certain. And then we follow Grace, her mother, a few months before she disappeared. And then we follow Charlie's father and Grace's husband, Alistair, a few years before the events of Charlie's timeline. Probably just confused you guys as much as I did myself. The main story we're following is Charlie's, and Charlie attends this elite prep school known as Knollwood, and the club to be in Knollwood is known as the A's. They are a very secret society, but they basically run the school. If they don't like a professor or how someone is doing something, they can easily get them fired without any hesitation or second thought. And one day Charlie gets an invitation to become part of the A's. So she's trying to figure out her place in this school and in this group, while also trying to figure out what happened to her mom. All the storylines do converge eventually, and it was great. I was intrigued. I had issues with Charlie, though. I felt that she was just kind of wishy-washy and would not put weight in serious things, but in just trivial things, it would be like life or death situation for her. So I gave it a 3.5 to 4-ish. So if you like plot-driven books, I do recommend this. I just wasn't a huge fan of Charlie's. So next I have my favorite book from March, and that is The Wife by Alifair Burke. I gave this a 4.5 along with IQ. This story just kept me entranced the entire time I was reading it. I think I read it in a day. It was that interesting and compelling, and I had to know what happened. We're reading about a woman named Angela Powell, who has a little bit of a questionable past that we discover throughout the book. And a few years ago, she was working at a catering company where she met Jason Powell. And she thought it would be a little bit of a summer fling, and then they would go on and, with the rest of their lives separate from each other, but she was wrong. Jason proposed, she accepted, and moved out of her mother's house into Manhattan and started this extraordinary Cinderella-type life. The only thing that she is kind of suspicious of is a lot of attention and kind of being in the spotlight. So Jason tries his best to shield her from that. However, there is a young woman that comes forward that says, Jason put the moves on her. I think that's the wrong way to describe it. I think it was that he exposed himself to her and was kind of flirtatious and made some sexist comments. But another woman comes forward with more damning accusations. So Jason insists on his innocence, and Angela believes him until things kind of start to get a little murky, and she has to figure out what's really going on in her marriage. So the next thing I picked up was A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny. This is the second book in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache series. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and it fit the prompt of again because I was reading another Louise Penny book. I had some issues with this book. I really did not like the character of Yvette from the first book, and she made an appearance in this one as well, which kind of disappointed me because, I kind of skimmed whenever she was around. And it also felt like the characters other than Yvette, like the actual characters that I enjoyed from the first one had changed somewhat. Not necessarily Armand, but I mainly saw the change with his second, Jean-Guy, and I really did not like that. I felt like in the first one, I felt like in this one, he was kind of whiny and negative, and in the first one, it didn't read that way to me. It read that he was a little critical, but never really just whiny, and it kind of rubbed me wrong. But the end had my jaw on the floor, you guys. So I don't want to give too much away about this book because it is the second in a series. But basically what happens is that we are following this cast of characters in a town known as Three Pines in Canada. And a murder happens, and Chief Inspector Armand Gamache gets in his car and drives to Three Pines from Montreal and brings his team along with him, so they're trying to figure out who done it and what happened. Next, I read The Marriage Lie by Kimberly Bell, and I gave this a 3 stars, and the prompt that this fit was borrowed, because I borrowed it from the library. We follow a woman named Iris, who has been married to Will for 7 years, and on the morning of their 7-year anniversary, I believe, Will gets on a plane to go down to a conference in Orlando, and Iris gets ready to go to work. Once she's at work at a high school in her job as a counselor, she gets some news that a plane has crashed. This is the same airline that Will was on, but it was a plane going to Seattle and went down in a Missouri field. So she was kind of nervous at first, but then felt pretty guilty because a huge wave of relief washes over her when she figures out that the plane was not going to Orlando rather than Seattle. However, she soon gets a call that Will was actually listed on the manifest for the plane that crashed. This begins her journey in figuring out why he lied to her, what's in Seattle, and what else has he been lying about. Iris was not my favorite character that I read about in the month of March, but I didn't mind her that much. I really just didn't like Will's character, and that's probably the reason I gave it a 3. I mean, it was fine. Nothing was bad. If I give something a 3, it means it was okay. Like, 2 is terrible, and 1 is, is this even a book? So 3 is not bad. 3, it's just fine. Fine. Another book that I put in the borrowed prompt is called Spy the Lie. 3 former CIA officers reveal their secrets to uncloaking deception. This is by Philip Houston, Mike Floyd, and Susan Carcinero. I thought this book was okay. I am interested in criminology and things along those lines, so I really didn't find any of this information new or jaw-dropping. And I also listened to this on audio, which was my mistake because there were charts in the book that I should have been following along in the book, so I could have gotten the most out of it. Next, I have Deal Breaker by Harlan Coben, and this was in the prompt again because I have read this book before, so I was reading it again. I gave it a 4 stars. I listened to this on audio, and I did not like the narrator at all. See, Harlan writes with this sense of sarcasm and wit, and the narrator was just flat. It didn't provide any of what I love in a Harlan, and yeah, it was still an okay book. This is the first book in the Myron Bolitor series. So Myron is a sports agent that was formerly a very, very good basketball player until he got taken out by a knee injury. So one of his clients approaches him and says that he found this ad featuring his girlfriend, but his girlfriend's been missing for a while. What's interesting is that Harlan also used to date a girl named Jessica, and the missing girl is also Jessica's sister. So we are trying to figure out what happened to this girl. I believe her name is Kathy. I think it is. And just seeing the day-to-day operations at MB Sports Reps, which is his sports agency. Yeah, a lot of nostalgia brought back by this book. My next book fit the prompt of blue, and it is The Cruelest Month by Louise Penny. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and it is the 3rd book in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache series, so we're going back to Three Pines to solve another murder. I did enjoy how a character that I hated in books 1 and 2, Yvette, kind of got a little bit of redemption towards the end. So I can't wait to go on to book 4 to explore her storyline a little bit more. One thing that I was not crazy about this book was that it felt like a conclusion. So while I didn't like it while I was reading it, I predict that I will like it a little further on, that Louise tried to wrap things up for us and not keep all of these mysteries open, try and, close some things, keep some things going, not like Pretty Little Liars or, anything like that, like the TV show where they kept every single mystery open. Yeah, no. That's a whole nother video, you guys. Next, I have a book that would go into the old category, and it is No Time for Goodbye by Linwood Barclay. This has been sitting on my shelves for quite some time. That is why I put it with old, and I believe, what did I rate this? 4 out of 5 stars. So we are following Cynthia, whose family disappears one night. She comes home from hanging out with her boyfriend, and her dad had actually gone to get her. He was quite upset. She goes to bed, she's a little bit drunk, and when she wakes up in the morning, her mom, her dad, and her brother are gone. Just gone. 25 years later, Cynthia is living in the same town with no closure as to what happened to her family. And she goes on this TV show, kind of like a Dateline spinoff, in hopes to bring new light to their case. So Cynthia starts to receive like weird calls and letters and signs that make her think that something fishy is going on. So she is looking into that. But the book is told from the perspective of her husband. The book is told from the perspective of her husband, Terry, so we actually get an outsider's opinion rather than, following her and trying to remember things with her, which I kind of enjoy the outsider's perspective. I am a little bit tired of the unreliable narrator trope. I just feel like it's being done so frequently and not all the time is it good. However, I was not crazy about the characters, and I felt that it went on a little longer than it needed to, this book. There are 437 pages in this book, which is a little ridiculous, but the plot moved very, very smoothly. The tension built very, very nicely. So I thought that for my first Linwood, I really enjoyed him as an author. Next up is The Plot Against America by Philip Roth. This is a retelling of history, so kind of like an alternate history in what would have happened if Lindbergh had won when FDR ran for his 3rd term, I believe. And Lindbergh meets with Hitler and decides to stay out of the Europe conflict, as they call it, and kind of strikes up an alliance with Hitler. Now, we're following the story of Philip, who lives with his family in New Jersey, and they are Jewish. So they're very, very nervous of what's going on in this time. This was very, very well written. And it really made me think quite a bit about, what is going on in the world, what was going on in the world. And I really enjoyed the narration because while it's dealing with this serious subject matter, you're following the story of a young boy. So you're kind of seeing things from his lens. So it's not gruesome, if that makes sense. It's not dark and grisly. It's just the facts. It's what's going on. And the narration kind of reminded me of the narration in A Christmas Story with Ralphie, and I just thought that was great. Really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend this book. So the last 2 things that I finished this month are both 3 stars, and it is Pancakes and Corpses by Agatha Frost, as well as Call Me Princess by Sarah Bladell. This book fits the prompt of new for March Mystery Madness, and it is a new to me series, and it is the first book in a series. We're following Julia South in this village in England, I'm presuming, where she owns her own cafe. Someone gets murdered. There is a new detective inspector in town, and Julia is trying to solve the case to kind of prove herself to not only him, but maybe a little bit herself as well. She just got out of her marriage and is facing some divorce papers, so she just wants to prove something to herself, I think. And I thought this was fine. I have books 2 and 3, but I'm probably going to unhaul this one and just continue with the series. I don't really think I would reread this book. So Call Me Princess is book 2 in the Detective Louise Rick series, which is a detective series that takes place in Copenhagen in Denmark. And this was good. We're dealing with online dating in this one. So this woman has been assaulted and Louise comes in with her unit to investigate what's going on. It turns out that the woman met someone online. She thought she trusted them. And things go bad from there. And then a woman's body turns up. And they link her to this online predator as well. I didn't like a few things in this book. I didn't like Louise's personal life. Like what was going on with her personal life. I thought that Sarah just threw it in just to throw it in. Like I didn't really get the point of it. And I also didn't like how her friend Camilla, who is a newspaper reporter, kind of has to be at the center of every story. I've only read 2 in the series so far, but Camilla was kind of pivotal to both situations. So I'm going to continue on with this series, and I hope it gets a little bit better. Just this was middle of the road. So I did DNF 2 books this month. So the first book that I DNF'd was The Odessa File by Frederick Forsyth, which is part of my Read It or Leave It, which you guys will see a video wrap-up of round 1 very soon. I tried to listen to this on audio, and I was so incredibly lost, a little bit confused, not really paying attention. So I decided, it's time just to part ways. If I'm really not going to get hooked the amount of time I spent listening to it, it's got to go. And then the next one made me really sad because I love a good cozy, and this one was just not a good cozy for me, and it is Marigolds and Murder by London Lovett. I believe I have books 2 and 3 as well. I could not find them, which was driving me crazy because I wanted to unhaul all of them. This follows the story of a woman named Pink who moved to Port Danby. She has her own flower shop, I think, and that's pretty much as far as I got. It was very, very tropey. It was very simplistic writing. If you enjoyed this book, I'm really not trying to put you down, but, I just have to let it go. The last thing that I had on my March TBR that I am currently still reading is The Stranger by Harlan Coben. Wow. I really enjoy Harlan Coben. I want that known, stated for record. However, I think that every author we really, really love puts out that one book that we're just not crazy about for whatever reason. And I think The Stranger is it for me. I am going to stop reading it for a little bit because I do have some review books that I need to read. But I do have this as an ebook from my library. So when I'm out and about and have some time, I might continue. I think I'm going to give it to the end of April to decide if I am going to read it or just unhaul it. There is just such a disconnect to the characters in this one. It's still his usual writing. The writing is funny in spots, but I just can't get invested with these characters, you guys, which is really, really sad because I wanted to adore this like I adore every other book by Harlan Coben that I read. By the way, I did make this. This is my first and only piece of clothing that I have ever made, and you don't realize it if you're a crocheter or a knitter, you do, but when you have the yarn and after you get done making something and you go to put it on, dang, this is heavy. So there we have it. That is the March wrap-up. Those are all the books that I read. That is crazy ridiculous. Watch, in April I'm going to read like 3. I'm not going to jinx myself. I'm not going to do it. No, I'm going to be positive and I'll read a lot. So I want to know if you guys read anything good in March or what you are planning to read in April. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to become part of the tribe if you have not already. I do post new bookish videos every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I will speak to you guys very, very soon with a Friday Reads. Bye.